told you I don't know who Purdue's going to hire. We'll let you know when we find out. Trust me, okay? You got to leave me the hell alone, all right? Oh, hey, sorry. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, live in Mackey Arena, following Purdue's 85-66 win over Hofstra. A big win for Purdue and a big win for jokes tonight, apparently. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your continued support of this silly little rap video endeavor. I do after all of these Purdue basketball games. I've made a solemn vow here this season to not be redundant, to not be repetitive, and to not just tell you the same things after every single game. And in this case, that involves Ross-Ade and his outstanding play, his continued dominance, so on and so forth. So good night, everybody. Now, in all seriousness, there's just kind of no way around this. It's just, Purdue has one of the singularly unparalleled. If something's unparalleled, can it be singularly unparalleled? That would seem redundant. Anyway, Purdue's got one of the biggest and most difficult to prepare for matchup advantages in college basketball once again. This is not a new thing for Purdue. Isaac Haas was this. Caleb Swanigan was this. Carson Edwards' ability on the perimeter to a certain extent was kind of the same way. This is just kind of what Purdue does. They have these Ripley's, believe it or not, types of guys who you just can't prepare for, you can't handle, and it wears people down, and it just sets the terms of play in these games. What has really jumped out this season about Ross-Ade has been not just his offense and his decision-making. The latter is a really big deal. The consistency in his scoring has been a really big deal. The rebounding has just been – there's not a better rebounder in college basketball right now than Ross-Ade, and I have seen every rebounder in college basketball in depth already this season. Hours and hours and hours of film review of every eligible rebounder in college basketball, and there's not a better one. I'm telling you this. There's not a better one out there than Ross-Ade. He's been unbelievable. He's a dynamic rebounder. By that I mean he rebounds outside his area. He chases balls. He gets his hand on balls that a lot of guys wouldn't get their hands on. He gets a lot of lower percentage offensive rebounds where he just kind of gets a paw up around a lot of people and kind of directs it to himself. And he's just getting to the point where you can call him, one of the biggest weapons Matt Painter's had at Purdue. He's had a bunch of them over the years. This one is the driving force between a team that's been outstanding this season. You just cannot say enough about Ross-Ade. The steadiness, the consistency, the approach he's brought to this team on down the line. I don't know if he necessarily was this player a year ago or had the opportunity to be empowered enough to impose himself in this way on last year's team, but he sure is now, and he's sure in a different situation, and he has risen to that occasion in every way, shape, and or form imaginable. So there you go. Last time this season I'm talking about how good Ross-Ade is, okay? I promise you. Last time. No more of it. If you hear me talking about it again, just hit stop and never watch another one of these videos. Hello, my notes. The rebounding thing is just a huge thing for Purdue, obviously. This is redundant to what I was just saying about. Is it redundant when you say the word redundant over and over again? Something to think about. Purdue's rebounding is just off the charts good. They're doubling people up at this point. I know Hofstra's Hofstra. I know Minnesota's Minnesota. These are matchups where you ought to really twist the knife on people, and that's exactly what Purdue's doing. Purdue's not letting anybody off the hook here. When they've got an advantage, they are maximizing that advantage, and again, they're just not letting people off the hook. 43 to 20 on the glass tonight. Both of these teams ended up shooting a similar percentage. So that number, the total there as opposed to the rebounding percentages, is more relevant. Hofstra did not get an offensive rebound other than a team rebound that must have gone off Purdue or something like that. I don't even remember it, but no individual Hofstra player got an offensive rebound. Where's Jaquil Taylor when you need him? He departed Hofstra a few years ago. So anyway, Purdue's just absolutely dominating the glass. Purdue's winning formula here has been pretty effective. You're getting to the free throw line a lot. You're making your free throws. You're dominating the glass. You're getting a lot of second chances. I think Purdue's doing a decent job with the turnovers. Purdue's doing a good job in half-court defense for the most part. The last 3 quarters there have been some ups and downs, but I think generally speaking, Purdue against Big Ten competition that's not playing small ball or in scramble mode, things like that, or playing for low percentage shots like some of these smaller schools will, I think Purdue's in a pretty good place defensively. Purdue can win battles of attrition here. From a physical perspective, they're deep. They seem to be fresh at the end of games. I just think that Purdue has a nice little winning formula going here. And rebounding is a huge part of it. I think the freshman guards, you can't say enough about how advanced they've been. And, Braden Smith was great tonight. He was really, really good. And, he's had some ups and downs here the last couple games. Hasn't started games great all the time. You know what? He's a freshman, and that's how it's supposed to be. And just because it's not sometimes doesn't really guarantee you anything. I don't have the slightest idea what the hell that even means. But there's going to be some ups and downs for these guys. Braden Smith's had a couple. Fletcher Lawyer's had a couple here and there. But by and large, those two guys have been really good. Braden Smith was really, really good in this game. Fletcher Lawyer didn't shoot the ball great, but I thought there were stretches in the second half there when these two teams were trading baskets where Fletcher Lawyer was really good. His basketball IQ and his just knowledge of how to play don't really show up in the box score. So he's another one of these guys. Braden Smith's tenacity is the same way. A lot of the stuff where Lawyer and Smith are most valuable and most effective aren't really stat categories. Braden Smith's tenacity, stuff like that might show up in the steals column here and there. Fletcher Lawyer's IQ and whatnot may show up in the assist column here and there. But by and large, what these guys do in terms of being such a big part of your basketball personality just really can't be overstated. Both guys have been absolute revelations this year. When I say revelation, it's more a revelation to people like us on the outside than it is to the people on the inside, because they are always quick to tell you, this is what we see in practice, this is what we've seen since the summer, or this is what we've seen since we recruited the kid. So these guys have been further ahead than most freshmen, I think, would ever be, especially freshman guards. Again, long season. The Big Ten's going to be physical. It's a long season. Big Ten play tends to change things a little bit, but there's not really a whole lot of red flags going up around either Braden Smith or Fletcher Lawyer that this isn't going to be sustainable. And Purdue's not going to keep kind of rolling how they're rolling here. One thing to like about this team, too, and I'll write about this later in the analysis, I'm trying to keep our front page uncluttered tonight, but I don't want to do a basketball game injustice here. But obviously there's bigger fish to fry in the Purdue world today. But I like this team's tenacity. You have to like this team's tenacity. I think, I don't know if it necessarily shows up in the turnovers forced categories, things like that, the blocked shots categories. But, Purdue doesn't give up on plays defensively. You've seen a lot of – go watch the first 2 defensive plays Ethan Morton made in this game, where he recovers on his guy to use his height and length to get a great contest on his guy, shooting jumpers, blocks both of them. He does a great job staying big around the basket when his guy gets an angle on him, gets him to the basket, whatever it might be. Doesn't give up on plays. How many times has Braden Smith or Fletcher Lawyer or Brandon Newman or Caleb First or Trey Kaufman-Wren or whoever it might be, David Jenkins has done it, come in and help, swipe at the ball, get a piece of it, either dislodge it for a turnover, break an opponent's offensive possession, or knock it out off the offense. That stuff doesn't always show up as steals or sometimes even turnovers, for the opponent. But Purdue just does a good job being disruptive, more so than a lot of these past few Purdue teams. I think it's a tenacious team, and I think it's a team that just doesn't give up on plays. This does show up on the glass. The offensive rebounding is part of this. Caleb First is a huge part of that. Zach-Edey is a huge part of that. The efforts they give on the glass are great. Trey Kaufman-Wren, I shouldn't leave him out. Mason Gillis, when he's playing, obviously, is typical Mason Gillis. But the tenacity of this team, one more piece of this whole winning formula that Purdue's shown to this point that isn't a fluke. At this point in the season, it is what it is. This is what you are. And this is a sustainable part of winning. So when you look at a lot of the stuff Purdue has done well this year, it's not cosmetic. It's not Purdue last year just outscoring everyone and not valuing possessions and not necessarily buying in defensively until the season was halfway over. This is stuff that if you keep it up, and there's no reason to think this team won't, this gives you a chance every single night. So you don't have to worry necessarily about that night where you go 5 of 20 from 3, which will happen eventually. You don't have to worry about that night really when Ross-Ade just kind of doesn't have it. That hasn't happened yet, but every great player is entitled to that, and it'll come at some point. And when I say he doesn't have it, I mean he finishes 7 of 16 from the floor, 15 points and 8 rebounds, as opposed to 30 and 20 like he's been doing here the last couple of games, or thereabouts, give or take. So Purdue seems like it's got some sustainable stuff going on here, and that's part of what's been a really, really impressive, best-case scenario start to this season. You do kind of look at these last 3 quarters here from a defensive perspective, where Purdue was kind of trading baskets for the majority of those 3 halves. Maybe that's worth being concerned about. Maybe that's people figuring Purdue out to a certain extent. Maybe that's just matchups happening to come one on top of the other 3 straight halves. I don't know. But Purdue has looked vulnerable from a defensive perspective for most of these last 3 halves, more so than they did even in Portland, against much better teams than these last 2. So that's kind of something to watch. I wouldn't, set off a fire alarm quite yet about that, but something worth noting, something worth kind of monitoring here as Purdue moves forward here, starting this weekend at Nebraska. That is the next time I will talk to you, Saturday from Lincoln, Nebraska. So from Purdue's 85-66 win over Hofstra of Long Island, this is Brian Neubert from goldenblack.com. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And thank you once again to the Purdue Union Club Hotel for your continued support. We appreciate it very much. Thanks a lot, everybody.